Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Keith Whittier. I am your host, and welcome to episode 4 of Let's Talk Racism. Today, you're going to be introduced to my friend Paul Dube. I have known Paul for many years. We used to work together back in the day, and sometimes when you leave a job and you say, oh, we're going to stay in touch, but you never do. Well, Paul and I have stayed in touch. We make an annual trip down to Montreal to watch my BC Lions take on his Montreal Alouettes. He's an avid sports fan, but more importantly, he's a husband, he's a father. We're going to talk about the conversations that him and his wife have had with their son. We're going to talk about being in an interracial relationship. And we're also going to get his expertise because he is a huge NHL fan, specifically Montreal Canadiens. We're going to get his take on the whole PK Subban situation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 4. Ladies and gentlemen, the conversation continues, and I'm very pleased to be joined by my good friend Paul Dube. I've known Paul for many years. He checks a lot of wonderful boxes. He is a great friend. He is a wonderful father, great husband, and arguably one of the greatest Montreal Canadiens fans that I know. Welcome, Paul. It's wonderful to see you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
First and foremost, how's the family doing during this whole pandemic right now?
We're doing okay. My son Dylan is in grade 5, and he's doing a little bit of work from home. The schools aren't opening up at least until September. Okay. So he's doing a little bit of work from home. They've been sent some links and some websites to go and do some work with. We're doing that. My wife and I both work in banking, and we're both working from home now. So I have my office down here in the basement, and she has it upstairs in the dining room. So we're getting through it. It's rough. We haven't seen much of family. We're a pretty close-knit family. I have 3 brothers and a sister. My parents are at the cottage. We've gone up for a day here and there. But yeah, it's not ideal, but we're getting through it. How about you guys?
We're doing okay. There's it's been a bit of an adjustment, but like I've been saying, I've got a roof over my head, food on the table, and lots of toilet paper, so I think we're going to be fine. So, of course, I've started this conversation with a lot of people like yourself in regards to kind of sparked by what happened in the States not too long ago with George Floyd and his senseless death. First of all, I wanted to get your reaction to that. Like, obviously, we've all seen the video. Police officers holding him face down, knee over his neck. He's screaming out that he can't breathe, and unfortunately, we unnecessarily lost this man. Seeing that, trying to process that. What was your take when you saw that, and with this whole situation?
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, when I saw that, I could not believe that. I mean, he, from everything we can see, like we've seen multiple angles, multiple videos now. From everything we can see, he was very well detained and very well, not a threat. Wasn't aggressive as far as we could tell whatsoever. Obviously, having his hands cuffed behind his back right off the bat tells you that he's not posing a threat at this point. So the fact that they had him down and stayed on him for so long, like, I mean, I've been trying to think about it. And it's like, okay, you got him down there. You want to make sure that everyone's safe. Have him down there for 30 seconds. Make sure you tell him that, when we let you up, make sure you don't, do this or that. Just fine. I mean, even having your knee on his neck in the first place is not a good thing. But if he would have done that for 30 seconds and let him up, we wouldn't be here today, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that he just stayed on him after he's saying he can't breathe, after calling for his mother, after saying that, they're going to kill me, having bystanders around saying, get off of him, he can't breathe, he hasn't moved for X amount of time. And having the other, like, one of the first things that, I mean, myself and I'm sure a lot of others notice is like, okay, you got one bad cop there, but you got 3 others that are doing nothing, like basically doing nothing. I mean, I'd like to believe that if I was there as a bystander, like the bystanders did what they could, they yelled and they screamed, and they have to think of their safety as well. They're not going to go and tackle the guy, right? But it just seems so unbelievable that there's 4 policemen there and none of them recognize the urgency and to let this guy up. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And yeah, I mean, just thinking right off the bat, like, this guy needs to be charged for murder. And these guys, like, for me, the other 3 right off the bat, I'm like, these guys have to be charged for, what they wound up being charged with, the accessory or aiding and abetting a murder. So No, it's unbelievable what we witnessed.
Yeah, I was very shocked at first when they weren't charged, because my mentality was, let's say, you know, you have two people go and they rob a store, and one person's driving the getaway car. The person goes in and he shoots people. The guy driving the getaway car isn't just going to walk home and like wipe his
Exactly,
hands from that.
charged right
Like,
away.
he's charged right
Correct.
away as well. So, um, so obviously you mentioned your son. So Dylan's about how old now? 10, 11?
He's 11. Yeah, he
He's
turned 11
11.
in March.
Okay. And now, how have you how have you and your wife, gone through like discussing this with him?
We've talked to him. Like, he actually, we watch quite a bit of news, CNN now, so he's in our room every once in a while, especially at nighttime, saying goodnight or whatever, and he watches a little bit of it too. And I try to explain to him, this, what happened, and how it shouldn't have happened, obviously. And he's old enough to understand that, you try to instill in him that, unfortunately there are bad people, and these are bad people, but you don't want him to fear police and things like that. So we talk to him in the way that, you need to be aware, you need to be ready that, I mean, he's mixed, so he could go through these things in the future as well, right? So kind of try to prepare him for it, but at the same time don't want to instill fear of the police into him. So it's a touchy subject, but we kind of explain what happened, and that these police officers are, hopefully they're going to be brought to justice if they've been charged, but will remain to be seen, whether they'll be sentenced or what happens, indicted, as far as that goes. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, you watch with him, you explain to him, and you try to make sure that he's aware, but at the same time not afraid, to live his life.
Yeah. Now you brought up the point. Your wife is of what background?
She's born in Jamaica.
She's born in Jamaica. I always forget that. And of course, my background's Trinidadian, and there's a bit of a rivalry there, but we'll set that aside for today.
Yeah.
So obviously, for some time now, you have been immersed in a world of being in this wonderful interracial relationship. Can you talk to me about some of your experiences? Because you guys, live in somewhat of a small town here in Ontario. Can you talk about some of the experiences that you and your family might have experienced?
Yeah, I mean, to be quite honest, I haven't really noticed a lot of issues like staring or anything like that, really. But it's always something that's in the back of my mind. Like, I'm kind of wondering if that's going to happen, or I'm always kind of thinking there's, and where I live is predominantly white, but it's interesting because just coincidentally, the couple behind us, they're also an interracial couple, and there's another one at the corner of my street. But those are probably the very few. I see very few Black people in the area, and what I did notice, or what Shanice has gone through, is I don't know 100% if this is racial related or not, but there's one thing for sure, is that she gets followed by police here a lot more than I do.
Okay.
Like, she got stopped for speeding at one point. She wasn't speeding. This was about, I want to say, 6 months ago.
Okay.
She was stopped for speeding very close by here, and she wasn't speeding. It was in a school zone. She passes by this school zone every day because she brings Dylan to school when school was still in session. She was stopped in the school zone. The police told her that the lights were flashing, so she was supposed to go from 70 to 40, which wasn't the case. She even told the police officer, just turn around. You can see the lights from here. They're not flashing. The police refused to do so and gave her a ticket. We wound up going to court, and we won our case. She didn't have to pay for it.
Okay.
But what I find interesting is that she's told me about at least half a dozen times where police have followed her. The same vehicle that I drive, that I never get followed. So is it a coincidence? That's the one thing that I find, that I guess you could say that's been our experience, as far as, her being Black here in Ottawa, or closer to home here, which I find strange because, she doesn't as a woman, she doesn't pose any more threat than I would. But in the same vehicle, she's been followed half a dozen times by police, and I've never been followed. So maybe you can speak to that more than I can, but it seems a little bit strange to me.
Yeah, it is very bizarre. I mean, I can speak to the fact that there have been times where I've been pulled over, and I can think of one instance in particular. We had just left a restaurant, and we were not even in the car 2 minutes, and we got pulled over, and the police officer was telling me, well, your car, you fit the description of somebody that we were, somebody that was like we were looking for in the area. And I can also recall a time where I was sitting out front of a house with Cher and one of her girlfriends. So there's myself and two white girls outside of this house. Me and these two white women. Police officer drives up, rolls down the window. Rolls down the window. This is evening, and says to them, "Are you ladies okay?" Not, "Hey, are you guys having a good time? Hey, you guys having a good evening?" But just kind of. So, I mean, there are definitely, situations that many people can speak to that does lend itself to profiling, 100%. Really quickly, my brother lives in Toronto, has a sports car, which, this was kind of like a reward for his hard work, but it's also been a detriment because now, he's getting pulled over all the time. So,
yeah, you meet the description of someone they're looking for. Yeah, black male.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
right?
Exactly. So
Exactly.
let me ask you this: what do you say to because one of the things that I'm finding very powerful right now is that there are a lot of people who have not experienced these things who are coming to the table and saying, "Hey, I want to learn. I want to know what I can do to not only be better but to understand and to help." What do you say to those people? Because again, you have experiences with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot about dialogue. It's a lot about this trying to understand what Black people are going through, because the whole, like, I even have friends on social media, what have you, that are still all about the all lives matter as opposed to Black lives matter, right? So
Mhm.
it's that education. I mean, I actually spoke to someone recently that I know that was kind of like speaking about against the looting and against the that's going on in the U.S. right now, the violence.
Mhm.
What I would like people to understand is when when we're more upset about looting than we are about people dying, there's a problem. Like, so that's where you have to get your mind around. Yes, there's some, and I mean, most of, if I'm not mistaken, I don't watch news 24/7, but if I'm not mistaken, most of the people that are looting, they don't have the Black Lives Matter T-shirts on. They're not holding the signs. They're not the protesters. They're people taking advantage of the situation. But for the people looking, don't be more upset that a TV was stolen than someone was murdered,
Yeah.
A week ago. So those are the things that try to get your mindset around what's most important and listen to the people that are talking to you. I mean, just the example of the NFL. I mean, how long did it take, and we'll see if it even, how much of a difference this is really going to make now, but how long did it take for people to say, oh, maybe Colin Kaepernick was right? Like, why did the NFL come out now saying that, I suppose better late than never, but they've been talking about this for a couple of years now since Colin Kaepernick first started that.
Mhm.
So those are the type of things, like, it's great that you're listening now, but really listen. Don't jump on the bandwagon and then, like, in a week from now forget all about it. So those are the types of things that I would say try to understand the gravity of the situations. Yes, people like those people that own those businesses don't deserve to be looted. But I loved what I don't know if you heard the Steve's Music Shop. They were looted in Montreal, and the next day they came out and said, those are guitars. They're not human lives. It's not a big deal. That's the type of attitude that people should be having. Like, I'm not for the looting. I don't, nobody condones violence or, having someone's business affected for this. But when we're more upset about those types of things than about the murders going on constantly, that's the problem.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. That's 100%. And I mean, I don't condone the looting. I don't see the parallel between somebody's killed and, hey, I want to get a new microwave or something like that. So I support that. But I also feel that just looking at the narrative or just looking at the looting and forgetting about what happened to this poor man, that's a cop out. And I definitely don't support that. As I hear you talking, of course, we spend a lot of time speaking about sports. It reminds me of back when the Vancouver Canucks had lost Game 7, and then there was the riot in Vancouver, and then the conversation was, oh, a lot of people a lot of sports fans in Vancouver are bad and and all this stuff. I've been to Vancouver multiple times. Vancouver's a wonderful city. That wasn't a representation of people in Vancouver. That was a representation of really drunk, stupid people. We've seen,
happened in Montreal, right? When they won the cup. There
Yeah.
were people saying, well, they won and they're still looting. But those looters are just taking advantage of the fact that there's thousands of people on the street. There's an opportunity there because if I sneak in and do this, well, everybody's watching the people celebrating, so I can get away with stuff. So those are people, and the same thing's happening now in the US. Those are people taking advantage of a situation. They're seeing that there's a pretty good chance that if I do this, I'm not going to get caught because all the attention's over there, right? So those, and that's what people are saying. Like, people have told me many times, I'm from Montreal, obviously people have told me many times, well, people from Montreal, look what they did at this, look what they, well, don't generalize the whole city because a few people looted because they saw an opportunity. Like to your point about Vancouver, same thing.
Yeah. Again, one of the things that kind of backtracking a bit, one of the things that I've always loved about you is your unbridled passion for the Montreal Canadiens. I remember when we first met, one of the first conversations was you were showing pictures of your son, and he was, if not a baby, probably like 2, or so, very young. And every other picture was him in like some sort of Montreal Canadiens getup. And I love that because, I think if you have a child and you're a big sports fan, you're going to you want your child to be a big sports fan of that team. And I remember what you said to me. You said, my son is going to have to make a lot of decisions in his life, and this is what I'm going to help him with. And I thought that was probably one of the best lines ever. So as a big Montreal Canadiens fan, I wanted to ask you, of course, one of the top players that's put on a Canadian suit, PK Subban. And PK Subban, not a lot of black players in the NHL. Just calling it as it is. It's not with the NBA. It's kind of like the opposite, which is in all fairness, you don't see a lot of black players in the NHL. Now PK Subban in Montreal was very much loved. I remember when they traded him to Nashville. A fan took a full page ad, and I believe it was the Gazette, basically saying he wasn't going to be going to any of the games that season. The only game he was going to go to was when Nashville came because he was so disgusted with how they handled the PK situation. So my question is this. When you look at the NHL and as it relates to players like PK, I know that he's boisterous and what have you, it seems to me that when PK Subban does something, like he scores a goal and he celebrates, there's this big outcry of anger and disappointment, and he shouldn't do that, and he's too cocky and all of that. When I look at somebody like Alex Ovechkin and he scores and he goes and he throws himself in the glass and he celebrates, it gets really quiet. Nobody really seems to care. Now, we're talking about race, and of course this started with Floyd, but this is an opportunity to look at things from different angles. As somebody whose opinion I tremendously respect, because quite frankly, some sports network should hire you for your insight. What is your take on that? Is PK being treated differently, or am I just misreading the situation?
First, I agree that a sports network should hire me. I miss my call. I miss my calling. If I could go back 20 years, I think I'd pick up journalism and become a sports talk show host or an analyst of some sort. But to your point, I do believe there's some racial injustice there. I agree with you that he's done some things that other players do, and he gets criticized way more than anyone else. One example, I follow PK on social media, and he's always doing great things. He's as most people know, he has a wing named after him at the Montreal Children's Hospital, the PK Subban Atrium, if I'm not mistaken. He helped raise, I think he helped raise, I think it was $10 million. Like, and as soon as people, like, the first thing they said is, well, why is he making this public? Why is he's not really donating all this money. He's just helping raise it. Like, there was always a negative like, the guy is helping raise $10 million. And I mean, again, it's a minority of people, but it's still people saying that, well, to be fair, he's not giving that $10 million. He's helping raise it. Well, isn't that pretty good too? You know, like, I think what he had said was, if they don't hit the 10, like, I think he gave $1 million of his own, and don't quote me on this, but I think he gave $1 million of his own dollars. Okay. And then he helped raise, and he said he wanted to raise 10 million within X amount of time. And if they're not at the 10 million, he'll give the rest. Something along those lines. But people were still criticizing that, like, as if doing that isn't good enough. You know, it's like, and anytime, like, he gave I believe it was $50,000 to help George Floyd's daughter, like, in a fund for George Floyd's daughter. And that, again, met with criticism. Well, $50,000 is like $10 to you and me. Yes, but that's not the only charity he gives to. So $50,000, he probably does that, you know, to 10 different charities in a year. People are saying, oh, it's a tax write-off. They're criticizing that it's a tax write-off. Yeah, but it's still like, it's not a tax write-off. He'll get some of that back, I guess, with taxes. I don't really know how all that donations work, but it's still money that wasn't there before. And the funny thing is, like, to kind of bring home the whole racial element, is that I noticed that Patrice Bergeron did a similar thing. He gave $25,000. I don't remember if it was to Floyd's daughter or to something, you know, some sort of a related charity. And he wasn't criticized at all on his social media. Like, I'm reading I'm reading the comments, and I think there was one person that said, well, it's tax, you know, you can get some back on your
tax deductible, or
tax deductible. There you go.
Okay.
But it was overwhelmingly positive for him, but for PK, it was criticism. And I mean, you can not like someone, but to go out of your way to criticize something so generous and so good, to me, that smells funny. You know, that's not just like that. To me, that has to have something to do with race, because why even mention it? Like, why even mention it? But yeah. I find that there is definitely a double standard. A lot of things that PK did were criticized when other people would do the same thing. Like, he has a big personality. I don't know if people are intimidated by that. People maybe are jealous of that. Like, sometimes I think, like, I would like to be a little more outgoing, but just because I would like to be a little more outgoing, I'm not going to criticize someone for doing something that I'm not capable of doing. But I find that they use that as an excuse. Like, PK's he's too rambunctious. How is that hurt anybody? How is that negative? You know, so I definitely find that there is a segment of the population, and I know it's hard to say for sure that it's racist, but sometimes it sure seems that way.
It does raise the question. It does raise the question for sure. I think one of the things that really disappointed me in the PK Subban story, if you will, was one of the years where Canada won the gold medal at the Olympics. It was like, okay, well, you know, PK Subban is now an Olympic gold medalist. And then the narrative was, well, he didn't really play that much. Did he play a lot? He didn't really play that much, which is interesting, because you would never hear somebody say, oh, hey, Martin Brodeur, you know, you were the backup goalie and it was really Luongo. Like, exactly. So the fact that so many people were from different groups were coming out and basically saying, oh, you know what, he didn't play that much. That was the narrative. It wasn't, hey, let's support all of our athletes who have you know, represented this country. So what does that mean? You're at the airport and one by one all the hockey players are coming out, you're clapping, and then PK comes out and you stop because he didn't play enough.
And
I
to
know
that,
I know I'm being a little facetious, but I mean, still, that seemed to be what the narrative was.
absolutely. And to that point, when PK Subban won the Norris Trophy, it was in the strike shortened season, or the lockout strike shortened season. It was a 48 game season. So that too, I always hear about that. Oh yeah, PK won the Norris, but it was only a 48 game season. Well, number one, it was a 48 game season for everyone. So it wasn't like it wasn't a level it wasn't a level playing field, right? And
Yeah.
I don't remember who won the Vezina and who won the Hart and who won all those other trophies, but I never hear, oh, remember when whoever Tim Thomas won the Vezina Trophy, but it was only a 48 game. Like, you don't hear that about all the other trophies, but you hear it about the Norris because PK won it. So again, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, I'm not saying it's all racist, but there's got to be an element there. It doesn't
Yeah.
make like
It definitely raises the question for sure. This is why I wanted to have a conversation with you, because again, like I said, I appreciate your perspective, and it's coming from somebody who, again, with the PK Subban piece, I don't know anybody, and I know I've got other Canadian fans, and I'm not looking to offend any of them, but it'd be hard pressed for me to say I know somebody who's more passionate about this team than you.
You can see myself in the back there of all my hats. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And what people need to know is that is just like probably like the smallest percentage of Habs stuff that you have. It's like you walk into your house. Actually, probably when you drive by your house, you realize that you're in Habs country. So listen, I appreciate your perspectives and for taking the time to speak with me today. You've raised a lot of really good points, as I knew that you would. And again, we're gonna keep having these conversations, and I thank you so much for participating, because it's getting the different perspectives of so many different people that's making this initiative work. So
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. And if you ever decided that you wanted to have a group setting, maybe a discussion between a group, I would be more than willing to participate in that, or anything else you need from me, just reach out.
100%. I sincerely appreciate that offer. Absolutely. Paul, thanks so much for your time. All the best to you and your family, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Take care.
Okay.